Hello everyone, the Nintendo Kid here, and let's face it, I've been way too positive in my countdowns recently, so I think it's time for me to talk about a negative topic. Overrated games. Now what I mean by overrated is when a game gets too much attention, and much more positive attention than I think it deserves. And the fact that the 10 games on this list get so much praise directed towards them has caused me to lose some of my faith in humanity. And because I think that a game is overrated does not mean that I hate it, it just means that I can't see why so many people like it when I personally think that the game in question is terrible. So that means if I personally dislike a game, namely the Elder Scrolls series, I won't include them on this list as I can see why they get such good reviews. Also, if you can't be mature about listening to someone criticise your favourite game, go watch something else because I don't have time for fanboys cluttering up my inbox. But please keep in mind that this list will be my most opinionated list to date, and my opinion will most likely be different to your own. So just because I put a game on this list that you like and I hate, does not mean that I am stupid and know nothing about video games. It just means that I have a different opinion. Right, let the rage begin.
Come here, I'll make it all stop!
Yeah, Conker's Bad Fur Day is on the list. Not because I hate it, but because I found it to be so underwhelming. For all the hype and praise this game got, I was expecting a 3D platformer masterpiece. What I actually got was a game which tried way too hard to be funny by focusing on humour rather than gameplay, so as a result the rest of the game suffered. The water and vehicle levels had controls worse than the Water Temple and Half-Life 2's vehicle sections combined, and only 2 of the boss fights actually memorable. And the so-called phenomenal multiplayer that everyone praises? Meh, it was average at best. Also, the ending of the game bugs me. Not only do we get a lovely piece of voice acting from the supporting cast, but the ending scene is pretty much identical to the opening, seeing as Conker is drowning his sorrows at a bar. Is this just saying that Conker has learned nothing from his adventures? In short, I see Conker's Bad Fur Day not as a bad game, but as a game that doesn't really deserve all the attention it gets, and for that reason, it's on the list. Sorry, Conker. Oh boy, I can already hear the Final Fantasy VII fanboys grinding their teeth in rage. But hear me out. I'm not too big on the whole Final Fantasy style of RPGs myself, seeing as I'm more of a Fire Emblem person. But I can appreciate the series for what it is, and I like most of the main characters. Except for the obvious. But Final Fantasy VII gets so much positive attention directed towards it that it overshadows the other games in the franchise, even to the point of having Square Enix trying to make every main series game after 7 similar to this one, and unfortunately failing miserably at it. A lot of things in this game bug me. For a start, it doesn't seem all that spectacular, and for a game praised for being incredibly emotional, I found it wasn't as emotional as the events following the destruction of the world in Final Fantasy VI. Similar to how Conker's Bad Fur Day tried too hard to be funny, Final Fantasy VII tried too hard to be emotional, so scenes that meant to feel depressing or sad just felt overused and stale. Even Aerith's death, the so-called saddest death scene in video games, just felt underwhelming and didn't make me feel anything. I also saw it coming due to the box art. Which leads me to my next point. The main characters have bland personalities, and the main hero and villain of the game, Cloud and Sephiroth, are some of the blandest and emotionless characters I've ever seen in a video game. Sephiroth is one of the most boring voices I've ever heard, and Cloud's strife is pretty much nothing except brooded reflecting his past the whole game. This is why Aerith's death didn't affect me. I felt nothing for the character, so I didn't feel anything when she died. However, this game does have 4 redeeming qualities, which prevent it from being any higher. One is the battle system, 2 others are the story and graphics, and the other is Cloud himself. Even though I find his personality boring, he is devastating on the battlefield. His special attacks are the most damaging in the game, and anyone who can swing around a sword bigger than he is, shrug off being impaled, and can chop through skyscrapers in one swing, is a badass in my book. Believe it or not, I actually consider Super Mario Galaxy 2 to be more overrated than Final Fantasy VII. This is because that Final Fantasy VII actually felt like I was playing a different game, whereas Super Mario Galaxy 2 just felt like an expansion pack for the first game. Don't get me wrong, I actually like playing this game, but it feels like Nintendo just took the original, added a couple of new power-ups, a few new levels and level gimmicks, Luigi and Yoshi, and sold it as a completely different game. So basically a copy-paste sequel. Dynasty Warriors, anyone? I'm also going to take a little bit of time to defend Josh Koch's opinion and what he said about this game. Granted, I don't hate the game as much as he does, but I can see why it's overrated. Seriously, not only do I think it does nothing to enhance the gameplay, but I counted 6 levels that were simply rehashes of levels from earlier Mario games. One of which was simply a rehash of the Flip-Swap Galaxy from World 1 of this game. I also agree that this was too easy, and that it basically holds your hand the entire game while playing it. Granted, I was stuck on a few of the World S levels in some of the Chimps challenges, but that's as hard as it got. Now, Mario games aren't the hardest games in the world, but I want a decent challenge, not this. The game also symbolises what I hate in the video game industry. It shows that a company only has to place a well-known and popular video game mascot into a game and use next to no innovation in order to market it as a different game. One last thing. People are so quick to claim that this is one of the best, if not the best, Mario games of all time, that they will attack anyone who so much as says one bad thing about this game, by sending them death threats, calling them small-minded idiots whose opinion doesn't matter, and saying they can't have an opinion, simply because in their minds this game is flawless and anyone who says otherwise is stupid and doesn't know what they're talking about. And after all that, I need a drink. Mario, pass me a glass of water. The first crucial selling point for any new console is the launch title. The Xbox had Halo, the PS3 had Little Big Planet, the GameCube had Luigi's Mansion, the Wii had Wii Sports, and the DS had Brain Training. Granted, I could understand Nintendo creating this game to appeal to an older target audience, I have no problem with that. But all the others worked as launch titles, because they demonstrated what the new console could do in both the graphics and gameplay departments. But Brain Training failed to deliver in both of these areas. Look at Super Mario 64 DS. Sure, the graphics aren't the best, but it attempts to push the DS's graphical capabilities as far as it can. Brain Training just featured a sterile white background with a simple menu layout. As far as I can tell, the only thing that even tries to show off the console's graphics is the 3D model of Dr. Kawashima's head on the left-hand screen. This game also hardly tries to showcase the touchscreen and mic, with only one mode using the touchscreen for something besides pointing and writing, and only 2 modes that incorporated the mic, but each used it for the exact same reason. For a game that's supposed to help improve mental skills, the training modes are so mundane and repetitive, it felt like it was making me go brain dead rather than make my brain work more. Now, I have nothing against the sequels to Brain Training, because I felt that they at least tried to make full use of the DS's capabilities, but the original game just feels like a really lazy attempt on Nintendo's part, which really does not deserve the 8 out of 10 review given to it by IGN. You know what I can't stand? People whining about how unrealistic some games are. Games like Kingdom Hearts, Pikmin, and the Metal Gear series to some extent are often frequent targets for these haters, who claim that a game needs to be realistic in order for it to be good. My argument is that games that are unrealistic show creativity and innovation. A key for a weapon? Sure, why not? A 3-inch tall man who commands an army of plant things to fight for him? Yeah, that'll work. A 100-year-old sniper who can run faster than a man in his early 30s? I say go for it. Without creativity, you have no innovation. And without innovation, games become dull and repetitive. What does this have to do with overrated games, you may ask? One word. FIFA. Let me say it straight. I don't just hate the FIFA series, I utterly despise it. Why? Remember when I said that without innovation, games become repetitive? Well, the FIFA series is as repetitive as a series can get. EA released the same game year after year, with the only changes being the playable teams and slight graphical changes. At least Super Mario Galaxy 2 had different levels and power-ups. Also, when a game is too realistic, it becomes no different from doing the actual thing in real life, which means that FIFA is no different from playing a real game of football outside with your friends. What made other sports games like Mario Tennis and Wii Sports Resort so good was because they incorporated creative, unrealistic elements and a cartoony art style to make them feel like an original idea. And another thing, I can't stand the amount of praise these games get. I'm sick of people going on and on about how brilliant these games are. If they like one or two but then got bored of the series and are able to admit that it has flaws, that's fine, I can understand that. But people constantly praise each game in the series and treat them as the best sports games of all time. These people are blind to the fact that these games have no innovation. I think it's fantastic that EA can afford to bring out a FIFA game each year. I'll tell you why we get a new game each year. It's because the EA are too lazy, they don't even bother to make the game different. They just take last year's game, change it slightly, and remarket it as something completely different. Here's an example. Take a look at this footage from FIFA 04.
You got to believe. You got to believe in something. Why not believe in me?
Now look at this clip from the newest game, FIFA 13.
I'm gonna tell you who I am, so you know that I am Ronaldo. That's what I call.
See any difference? No, there is none, that's why. That's the point I'm trying to make. EA does nothing to refine the series formula and just uses it as a gigantic cash-in the video game market. And Nintendogs. Another example of a pointless cash-in by video game companies. I really fail to see why this game is so popular. And like FIFA, I am tired of people's praise and attempts to defend this so-called incredible DS game. A typical argument from a Nintendogs fan is that they say it's cheaper to buy a copy of the Nintendogs than to get a real pet. I say differently. In my opinion, this game was not created as an alternative to a pet, but to show you the amount of love and care needed to look after a real dog. Yet this backfired due to people becoming too attached to their digital pets and decided to devote their time to a collection of data rather than an actual living, breathing animal. As a result, the game's popularity skyrocketed. This seems familiar somehow. Oh yeah, Tamagotchi. Naturally, I wouldn't have minded that this game was so popular if it was a good game, but this game promised so much yet delivered so little. This game had only one appealing quality to it, the graphics, which I'll admit are pretty damn good for the Nintendo DS at the time of its release. However, it's not how the game looks, it's how it plays. So you're sitting there asking me, so Supreme, how does it play? The answer? Not that brilliant. At times the touchscreen controls were really off, meaning that if I touched the far right corner of the screen, it would select something much further up. So for a game that focuses primarily on touchscreen controls, response issues like this are unforgivable. I'm sure this is just me nitpicking, but if a game that is based around using a touchscreen has control issues that are this bad, then it really should be taken into consideration when reviewing it. Speaking of reviews, this game got a score of an 85 out of 100, won several awards, and one reviewer even gave it a perfect score of 40 out of 40. Now Nintendogs isn't perfect, no game is, but this game, which is clearly average at best, does not deserve these types of reviewer scores. I'm actually surprised I didn't put this game any higher, but anyways, here it is. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. I was actually very biased against first-person shooters as a whole for the best part of 3 years, writing them off to be generic, bland, and uncreative. Well, at least until I played games like Medal of Honor Rising Sun, Halo 3, and of course, Team Fortress 2. Now I'm starting to like them. I don't really have much of a problem with the Call of Duty series now. I like World of War due to its interesting missions, and of course, Nazi zombies. I like Modern Warfare due to the very anti-war storyline and the interesting characters. I was a bit iffy about Modern Warfare 2, but I found it okay, especially the mission at the end. So it eventually came down to either this or Black Ops. Both left a stale impression on me. The missions were unmemorable, the story of each extended as far as, oh no, terrorists are planning to destroy the world, let's stop them by shooting everyone. And do not get me started on the multiplayer. Why did I eventually choose Modern Warfare 3? Simple. There was one thing I liked in Black Ops. The zombie mode. I mean, who doesn't enjoy doing this? Modern Warfare 3, on the other hand, had no redeeming qualities. First off, the campaign. The story was boring, and the missions were just stale. Ideas are the same thing, and expect the developers to refine the formula and make it interesting. But no. What we got was an extremely repetitive storyline with no innovation from previous titles. Second, the gameplay. Thankfully, the developers got rid of the lighting issues and sluggish gameplay issues that Black Ops had, but they removed everything that made the games a challenge to play through. Where are the sniping missions, the stealth missions, the cover system that actually worked? We didn't have them. What we got instead was a control system that extended as far as hold down the fire button for 10 minutes and you win. That's the point I'm trying to make. This game offered no challenge and didn't involve using any skill to beat it. But wait, we're not done yet. This game also gets praised for its multiplayer for being both unique and the best in the franchise. To that I say... bullshit. There was no uniqueness, no innovation, just the same old deathmatch crap that Treyarch put out year after year with no change to the formula. And before you start saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, the multiplayer was far from perfect to begin with. The only reason why they haven't done anything is due to arrogant 12-year-old fanboys who buy these games just to play COD's online multiplayer all day and to worship the series like the god of FPS games. You know, I think GLaDOS has something to say to you.
Maybe you should marry that thing since you love it so much.
Finally, the ending of this game is terrible. For something that's not just supposed to wrap up the game, but also the Modern Warfare trilogy, it does a terrible job at doing so. The final mission is just a button masher spam fest, and Makarov's death is so boring and dull, it just feels like he takes his own life, and doesn't feel satisfying at all. In short, Modern Warfare 3 is a bland, stale, boring, broken mess of a game that does not deserve to stand among great action games such as Metal Gear Solid 3, Halo Reach, and GoldenEye. I honestly didn't want to place this game on the list, but I couldn't ignore how overrated Angry Birds has become. Don't get me wrong, I love playing Angry Birds from time to time, but let me ask you a question. Is Angry Birds so good that it deserves a sequel? Probably yes. Now let me ask you another question. Is Angry Birds so good that it deserves 2 sequels, 3 spin-offs, a cartoon series, and a feature film? No, it doesn't. Yes, Angry Birds can be addictive, but what started as an original idea has been completely blown out of proportion by fans constantly asking for more. You know you've gone too far when you've created a theme park and a gigantic real-life version of the game. Another reason why I think Angry Birds is overrated? Due to the praise it gets from reviewers. Sure, Angry Birds is fun and addictive and great for killing time, but that's all it is, a time waster. The last time you played an Angry Birds game was probably when you were bored or had nothing better to do at the time. When have you ever decided to play Angry Birds instead of, say, Pokémon, or Portal, or even Mario? That's why I put Angry Birds on the list. I may personally like the games, and I'm sure a lot of people do, but you can't ignore the out-of-proportion ratings that Angry Birds has gotten. What do I mean by this? GameSpot gave Angry Birds a score of 9 out of 10, and the previously mentioned Modern Warfare 3 only got a GameSpot score of 8.5. Now, in my opinion, this class is overrated. I only need to play this sound clip to tell you the next entry. I hate the Raving Rabbids games. Ubisoft only created them so they could make a Rayman minigame pack, but what they didn't realise was that these things would become even more popular than Rayman, and it's only now that Rayman's starting to make a comeback on the Wii U and 3DS. The Rabbids games were so well received and so overhyped that fans of the Rayman series such as myself were afraid that we'd never see another Rayman game released again. The only things that fans wanted was more of the Rabbids insanity, meaning that Ubisoft focused primarily on making the games funny and showcasing the Rabbids performing attempts at humour, causing the quality of the games to constantly decrease. 1 or 2 games I could handle, but how many Rabbids games did we get? No less than 8. Granted, the DS versions of Rabbids Go Home was a challenging puzzle game, but I lost interest in it far too quickly and haven't played it since then. Enough of mindless rage, I suppose I should talk about these games in detail. I will tolerate people defending the first 2 games in the series, but if you ever try to defend Rabbids TV Party or Rabbids Travel in Time, you either are completely blind to the flaws of these obvious rip-offs of the Mario and Sonic series, or have a fetish for really terrible games. Oh, but guess what? They also did a fighting game, Rabbids Rumble. You know why I hate it? It's a fighting game that thinks it's Street Fighter, but plays like an RPG version of Sonic the Fighters. In short, it annoys me to no end that these things are so popular. I can't see why so many people like them and why they have so many games. Every time a Rabbids game comes out, I feel a small bit of my remaining faith in humanity die off and wither away. Okay, let's have a recap, simply to allow me to calm down before we show number 1. Number 10, Conker's Bad Fur Day. Number 9, Final Fantasy VII. Number 8, Super Mario Galaxy 2. Number 7, this game shouldn't exist. Number 6, the entire FIFA series. Number 5, neither should this one. Number 4, Number 3, Angry Birds. Number 2, the Raving Rabbids series. For a game to be number 1, it must have next to no redeeming qualities. It must be extremely overhyped and praised by reviewers and fans. It must have a fan base which cannot see its faults. And it must be from a series I personally love. Number 1 is Pokemon Generation 1. Go ahead and rage at me, Gen 1ers. I don't care. The video is already made, it's on YouTube, and there's nothing you can do about it. If you can't stand me raging by your oh so precious red and blue, stuff something in your ears because I'm about to show you no mercy. Okay, I will admit that Gen 1 does have its good points. After all, it did kickstart the Pokemon franchise, and was a great game for its time, but by today's standards, it's archaic, glitchy, and bland compared to the rest of the series. First off, people claim that all of the Pokemon games are unoriginal compared to this one. I disagree. All there is to do in the towns beside challenge gym leaders is a game corner and safari game. Compared to the later games where you can participate in Battle Frontier challenges, ride planes and subway trains to different areas, make films, participate in contests, and even challenge gym leaders from previous regions. Now don't get me wrong, I like the Kanto region, but the town designs are so bland compared to Hoenn, Unova, and even Johto, with the only exceptions being Lavender Town and Cinnabar Island, which I have to admit are pretty interesting. Another problem are the gameplay mechanics. There is no way to influence your Pokemon stats. Battles against strong trainers are purely luck-based, and the psychic types are completely broken. The first two can be forgiven slightly because of the fact that Game Freak hadn't fully established the Pokemon formula yet, but the problem with the psychic type? Unforgivable. They only have one weakness, Bug, and the only decent Bug-type Pokemon able to stand up to them is Scyther, a very rare Pokemon to encounter. Another thing that bugs me is that tons of people claim that the original 150 Pokemon are the best ever and that Nintendo should keep the series going with just them. I completely disagree with that. First, if there were just 150 Pokemon, the series would get very old very fast. Secondly, all this talk about the Gen 1 Pokemon being the most powerful is really annoying. Sure, they were good for their time, but now they are overshadowed by tons of others, and the only ones I actively use as part of my teams are Lapras, Kingler, Alakazam, and the previously mentioned Scyther. However, this doesn't mean that all the others are bad Pokemon. I still like them, but they, like their game, get so much praise and fanboy worship it irritates me to no end. I'm a Nintendo kid, and you fanboys can't change my opinion. Troll me all you want, but I think that Pokemon Red and Blue are the most overrated, overhyped, and overpraised games of all time. And for all you non-fanboys and intelligent viewers, thank you for respecting my opinion, and goodbye.